been like 40 degrees out, and since I work outdoors, it's always a joy.
Yes, so today we were talking about hot topics, and a big one, and I wrote a blog about this a while back, so it's not completely fresh in my mind. However, the overall general term is, and it was, what are people in the mental health world going through? What are the issues that are sort of like forefront right now? And it has been since kind of like the beginning of this pandemic, this term languishing, which generally is just that people are not feeling like depressed. However, they're not feeling overly joyed or happy. And people who are predisposed to depression and anxiety are now suffering from this languishing because of the pandemic. And I was just talking with Sean briefly before we hopped on, is that at the beginning of the pandemic, we had that kind of like, even though we did feel this languishing, there was sort of like that light at the end of the tunnel, because we were told, well, when the vaccine rolls out, life will get back to normal. And clearly, we have seen now, like, it just has spiraled even, I don't know, it's between vaccination, vaxxers and anti-vaxxers, between, oh, the Delta variant, now that we know so much more about COVID and that you can still get it, like, it's just, and we just, again, and then they're saying, as we're heading back into September, back to school, they're talking about fourth, fifth, sixth waves. People are saying we're not going to get out of this for 6 to 8 months. So, it just seems like we're stuck in mud, and it's just never ending.
Yeah, I think personally, like, the vaccines are obviously like a little bit of a hot topic right now with a lot of people, but personally, from my experience, and like this is coming from somebody who is quite the pessimist, who is trying.
I call him the Grim Reaper.
Actively trying to turn that state of mind around, because it leads to some negative thoughts, and that's just not really a good place to be. But I had very little faith that the vaccinations were going to be rolled out effectively from the very beginning.
What Sean said at the very beginning was, we're not getting out of this till 2022. And
yeah, I know you. Yeah, I think you were a little upset when I said that.
I was like so angry, but now.
For me though, like, for my own personal experience, it was like, I remember like the original lockdown, right? So like, everybody is scared. Nobody knows what to expect. It's serious, and everybody took it seriously. Like, I remember because we were deemed essential work, so like, I remember driving to work in the morning, and like, it was a ghost town. Like, I'd never been on the 401, and it was that quiet. Like, it was unbelievable. And I think a lot of people, although like it was a very scary time, I think there was an overall sense of community. I think everybody kind of banded together and was like, hey, if we go hard at this, we can make it through, and we'll be fine. And I think a lot of people really, really did do that, and they did the best they could. And then, we kind of slowly got pulled out of lockdown, and not every municipality did. A lot of, like, I know you stayed in lockdown for, like...
I don't think we're out.
Yeah,
are we out?
I have no idea. I don't know. I honestly don't know
anymore. I'm not sure.
So, and I think that kind of caused a rift, too, where, like, some little pockets were like, oh, you guys are pretty good.
Now it was municipality bashing.
Yeah, so,
like, oh, yeah, those people from Peel.
Exactly.
Like,
so
are you serious right now?
You take this beautiful... Because as Canadians, I feel like we can band together really well when it's something that matters. So, we were all banded together, we were all in it together, and then it was almost like segregating, like, little municipalities here, and next thing you know, like, everything...
Don't come here.
Yeah.
Why are you coming here? Don't shop here.
It all just
like,
it all just kind of crumbled. And I think without that sense of community and that sense of, if we do this and we do it right, we'll get through and everything will be fine. I think that's when a lot of people started going, okay, so like, what's the point now? And that was the beginning of a lot of people just starting to feel stationary. Like, I used the term treading water all the time. And that's literally how I feel a lot of people are emotionally right now, where they feel like, okay, like I get up, I go to work, I come home, or I get up, I go to my home office.
Or I don't have work.
Or I don't have work.
Because of this pandemic.
There's
so
many.
It's in your face all the time.
Exactly. So there's so many little possibilities on why people just feel stationary. They're not overly joyed because there's nothing to look forward to other than a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh wave potentially. Or, you know, is the economy going to bounce back? Some people say the economy's better than ever. Some people say that it's not. I think a lot of people are just in really uncertain times, and there's nothing that's exciting to look forward to. So everybody just feels so stationary. At least that's my feel anyway.
And then again, from my background, you know, this is the life of an informal caregiver. So everyone is getting a preview. This is the trailer that never ends.
Yeah, this is it's like the crash course.
Right. This is how an informal caregiver feels. So I told you we've had this. I've trained for this. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I'm the gold medal Olympic athlete in this sport. So my languishing doesn't feel as bad because I just felt like that was sort of a large component of when I was informally caregiving. I always felt like flatlined.
Yeah.
I didn't feel well when I got out of my depression, but I mean, I never felt overly joyed. So it would be, I will never forget when I was asked to keynote speak in Paris, and that has always been a dream of mine. Like Paris, like going to Paris, not to keynote speak, like, and
like, are we talking Paris, Ontario?
No.
No, I'm kidding.
So when it happened and like the things that I had to do to initiate that trip and like the reality of it and like, because that was something I went by myself, like which I've never traveled to, you know, well, Europe by myself. So that was, there were always like, it was first for a lot of things. And you know, even the fact that even giving the speech and it was neurologists and doctors and I'm like, it never done, it was just like you said, oh, okay, yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
It was like no big, when it was done, it was like no big deal. So that's what I think languishing is. It's like, yeah, that's great, but you're not overly excited.
So I think that interesting enough is like I've been through a decent amount of therapy. I've been doing a lot of personal work, and this is actually the first time I've actually heard this term.
Yeah.
So like, and to be completely honest, like literally like heard it like half an hour ago for the first time. It put a word to a feeling I'd had for a very long time. My biggest issue with it was like I very, very much became I like to refer to it as emotionally desensitized.
Mm-hmm.
So I was so numb to just about everything. I like just like a perpetual state of meh.
Yeah.
Not happy, not sad. Like I got to the point where I was like am I a psychopath?
I say that like, no, like adequate. You're adequate.
Yeah, like it's like
I'm
okay.
just adequate.
Yeah, life's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. So it's just day by day. And the scary part for me was because I was in that state for such a prolonged period of time that when I did seriously start to dip into some pretty gnarly depression, I didn't notice. Like I'd already felt so numb for so long, you know, actively still going to work, still pursuing my job, still, you know, going out to see people, doing all the social things that I'm supposed to.
We should come up with a new term. So we should call it like functional depression.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like functional alcoholism.
I was like I always told everybody like I had high functioning depression.
Yeah.
Like,
because I could still get the stuff that I need to get done. I could still do I could still parent. Yep. I could still caregive. Yep. I could still go to school. Still work. I could still do all that, but I'm still depressed.
Oh yeah, I was in a horrible mental state.
Right.
Horrible, but like I'd still go to work and like be exceptionally good at my job. I would still, you know, my relationship suffered greatly, for a lot of reasons. And the one thing I did really start to notice near the trail end is my actual friendships started to suffer, and that was greatly due to the fact that like I didn't want to leave the house. So like I'd leave the house for work. I'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd go to work. Did I like it? No, but I did it because I knew I had to do it. But if there was an option for me to opt out of doing something, that's when it was very apparent where I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. No, not for me. So like that's when it really started to dawn on me, and that was one of the many cues for me to get into therapy. I mean, like I think we discussed, I've been thinking about it for like multiple years before I actually pulled the trigger on that one.
They said like how do you combat languishing? Well, they're like change of scenery, do what you love to do, but that's kind of counterproductive because when you're languishing, you don't know what you love to do.
I mean, I'm not gonna say that I'm in like a super healthy mental state, but compared to where I was, a year ago, it's night and day, and I still don't know what I'm crazy passionate about. Like I'm at this really interesting point in my life where like I need to relearn kind of who I am, what I'm passionate about, because I was turned off. Like I literally my brain was turned. I was on autopilot, languishing for a very long time.
Well, I think it's interesting that it's coming up now because I just said like that's typically what a lot of people do. Like I'm sure if you did a survey, this didn't just happen because of the pandemic. I think maybe there's a word put to it now.
There's a word. I think this is
a new buzzword. We all have these, like the pandemic. The first buzzword was pivot. That was everyone was saying it in every sentence. Every Zoom meeting there was a pivot. Now the new buzzword is languishing, even though it's sort of just like status quo. It's like you're just existing. I call it existing.
Yeah, like for me, like it was autopilot. Like people would ask me how I felt, and I'd be like, I just feel like I'm sleepwalking.
And some people, again, we could do the extremes, right? So people who deal with this either have to self-medicate because they can't just, like I told you, we're high functional languishers.
Oh yeah, like, and I self-medicated. Like I was drinking relatively heavily. Like I was drinking more than the average person.
But you were drinking when you could, not.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was very much like a Friday, Saturday night. Like I was drinking quite heavily.
You've just probably described maybe 80% of the population.
Yeah, there's
depending on, and it doesn't have to be drinking, but
for sure.
These are the hard topics that nobody, and I think that's part of the issue that nobody really. Well, we've already. If we go right back to like one of the first podcasts, it's until you're ready to be completely honest with yourself, there's no sense going to therapy or trying to fix it.
Yes, I agree. Like there's the way I described it to a very close friend of mine was I was like, it's like if you don't like the way you look, like if you look in the mirror and you don't like yourself, right? And you're wondering what can I do about it? Most people, they look in the mirror, they go, I don't like myself, and they look away.
Mm-hmm.
If you take therapy seriously, like no, there's no looking away. That mirror's going to follow you. You're going to stare at yourself. You're going to see into your soul. You're going to see into a lot of the insecurities you have. And, like, that's when the real work begins. But it's incredibly uncomfortable because you're dealing with a lot of very personal issues and a lot of stuff that, you've suppressed for a very long time.
Or I was just going to say that. Like, you don't know. Like, it could
stuff
be
comes
childhood trauma. Like, you don't know what you suppressed.
Could be something very minor that's having a detrimental effect to you as an adult.
Well, it's so funny. Well, it's not funny. It's ironic because my aunt was over here a little earlier, and we were just talking because she was talking about her past, and I found out today that my great grandmother, she died young, and because she saw. This was in Trinidad, so she saw a snake, and she was in a hammock, and she tried to jump, because she was startled, and she hit her head. And I have a phobia of snakes and hitting your head on a rock. and I didn't know where it came from till today.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, snakes are not.
Like, I obviously didn't know my great-grandmother, and she died young, so I just think, see, these are things that you don't even know genetically you're predisposed to. So think about childhood trauma that you're actually witnessing and suppressing.
Oh yeah, and the interesting thing too is, not all parents are exceptional, but
No.
there are a lot of phenomenal parents out there doing the absolute best they can. They can still mess you up.
Of course.
And they'll do it loving you to death and not intentionally. Like, I think that's what a lot of people need to understand is you don't need to go to therapy just because you had a traumatic childhood.
You're right.
You're not going to go to therapy and be like, okay, lay down on this couch and, so tell me about your childhood.
Well, interesting that you said that, because that's typically what happens with narcissists. Narcissists develop not because sometimes, okay, of course there could be a trauma, but the other thing is when your parent puts you on a pedestal and spoils you to death and makes you feel like you're like the best thing ever, and then now you have that high sense of self and you're self-centered, so it translates into narcissism.
I mean, I'm always down for a good nature versus nurture debate. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things that can happen throughout your life that you very much so potentially can hold on to at a subconscious level that can affect your daily life, and you don't know it until you do that deep dive. And it's not an easy thing to do, but it's definitely worth it.
Because you have to be vulnerable, and a lot of people don't want to be.
Oh, it's not easy.
No,
it's not easy at all.
We speak about it all the time. The therapy or even talking about things that are uncomfortable, it doesn't feel good. But it's just like working out. So no pain, no gain.
Yeah.
Like you work out because you have whatever, stress relief, or you want your body defined. Depends on whatever your goal is. But I have never heard someone say that, that workout, that was so pleasant. I don't.
That was brutal, bro.
They're sweating, almost half dying, gasping for air.
Yeah. Bro, give me a high five. I just puked and changed.
Next day they can't walk. It doesn't seem pleasant at all, but they keep doing it.
Yeah.
So if you care that much,
most people they develop an unreal sense of mental clarity after a hard workout.
Right. So why would you do that with your brain?
Same thing intellectually.
Right. Why don't you rinse out your brain or try to reset your brain, rewire your brain, because it's proven you can rewire your neurotransmitters.
You can.
It's
definitely
scientifically proven.
Scientifically proven. Takes a lot of work.
Right.
I mean, you can. Takes a lot of work and a lot of time.
Right.
But you can definitely rewire those pathways.
And let's also keep saying, because I always tell my clients all the time, and I have to remind myself, so because I have to counsel myself, where when you are depressed, right, it's because you're worrying about the past, right? And you can't change the past, so it's really crazy. It's really, when you think about how silly it is, you can kind of snap yourself out of it. And then if you're worrying about the future, you're anxious. So when you can put a label on how ridiculous it is, because it hasn't happened yet, you can't change the past, so there's no sense being depressed about it because it's already happened. So no matter what, I wish I would, it has, you can't. No matter how hard you will, unless you are Michael J. Fox and you can go back to the future or whatever it is, you're not going back to the past and changing it. So you can only worry about where you are, and you're wasting time. Because right now, you have to just get into the now and what's happening right now. That's all you have.
Yeah. So, for me personally, I need activities. For me to be mentally in the right headspace, I really like activities. May that be hey, we're gonna go canoe.
Right, because
this weekend.
you know why? Because you have to concentrate on what you're doing. now.
To me, it's like
I have to be in that zone.
Exactly. So it removes all the outside factors and allows me to just exist in like whatever environment I'm in and really enjoy it. Like I know I went to a friend of mine's cottage a couple weeks ago. She has a cottage on an island. So it's like literally just us. I looked at my phone for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
In 3 days. Like I didn't even bother. Like I didn't have it on me. I was out on paddle boards. I was out just living in the moment, and like I felt phenomenal.
I haven't been on Facebook for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's great.
And I don't care.
Yeah. It's crazy once you start to disconnect from a lot of outside influences, how much clearer you're able to process your day.
Well, because I just feel like I have so much work to do, and it's a time waster.
Yeah, Facebook is a tool. It's a tool for procrastination.
Right, and I go down the rabbit hole. So I'm thinking, and then when I'm not on it, and it's indicative of my personality. I'm like, I was saying that to someone. I'm either super stressed, like going crazy, or I don't care. There's really no in between.
Yeah, my interesting thing is for me, like I go from super stressed to like so stressed that I'm like throw my hands up. I'm like I'm just done, and that's like not a point that I like to hit. Like I'd rather deal with the stress before that.
Does it like completely diffuse?
No, like I'm just so overwhelmed that like I just shut down, and like it's not a healthy done. It's just like a like I give up on everything done.
So for me, I'm like a balloon. So I feel like I get to that, and then when the air's all out, I don't even think about it again. That's how crazy it is.
Oh, that's crazy.
I know.
That's like almost a skill, but like.
And I don't know if it's a learned skill, or is it that's just now how, or it could be a learned skill where I realize like I'm trying to control too much. I'm literally driving myself crazy.
Well, it could very possibly be from your caregiving background.
Yeah, like
and
it's
just the fact that like the stress builds until you're like, okay, like actively, I'm mentally noting how stressed out I am, like.
And
not
I don't
okay.
like how it feels. Like I told you, it's
palpable.
palpable.
It's toxic. Yeah.
And it starts spreading. Like you're irritated, you're lashing out. The dog is driving you nuts.
Yep.
And then you're like, okay, I'm projecting all of my frustrations on everybody else. Why not just like what am I doing? I don't like how this feels.
I like the word projecting. My current girlfriend and I use that word a lot. And we'll use it because if there is like a hard topic being discussed, we use that because we're like, okay, am I, for example, projecting my insecurities onto you? Or is this like something of value that needs to be discussed? So we'll kind of go through and make sure, okay, I actually feel really good about this. Like this is something we need to talk about. Okay, that's great. And then we work through it that way. I think that's one of the most interesting things that I did not expect from therapy was it's very, very difficult for me to get mad at anybody. Because now that I've gone through enough stuff and I've done enough personal growth, and like I'm no expert by any means, but like if somebody starts lashing out at me, it's very easy for me to look at them and be like, okay, like you're projecting, these are probably some of your insecurities.
Or are you mirroring? Like, am I doing something?
Exactly. Are you picking up on my, like, you know what I mean? It's a very interesting, it's difficult to get mad because I'm like I know a little while, like a couple months ago, 5 or 6 months ago, my dad and I got in a big argument at work. And I literally left. I left the job. I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. This is toxic. I can't handle it. And I left. And then as I was driving home, I started thinking about it and I was replaying it in my head. And I'm like, he lashed out and he snapped because I almost just hurt myself pretty badly. So like that's his own fear, his own everything colliding, and not necessarily how he wanted to represent himself, but that's just literally his reaction of like, I can't believe you would do something like that, and him losing his mind. But that's because he doesn't want to have to watch his son get hurt. So like as I started driving away, I started realizing, okay, like this is obviously what happened. But like before therapy, I would just be like, what an a-hole. Like I can't believe he acted that way.
And
now I'm able to actually, slightly diagnose a situation,
right,
or at least attempt to.
Well, I think that's what people don't understand about the therapy. Talk therapy is just that. It's like putting some tools in your toolbox.
Yes.
So that you can pull it out when you need to pull it out. And identifying who you are as a person so that you're not taking anything personally when you're dealing with the real world. Right? Because you can't hide and, shield yourself, because that's the other thing too, like bringing up toxic. But that's still a tool that you're recognizing. I'm going to leave this because this could escalate.
It's literally the exact reason I left,
right,
was because I was like, I'm triggered enough at some of the stuff that he has said to me that I'm going to blow a gasket, and like, do you really want to end or hurt a relationship that's that close over something stupid like that? Like,
exactly.
I'm going to walk away because I know I need to be able to handle this maturely later. It still wasn't handled the best way possible by any means, but in comparison to before therapy, there was a big, big difference.
I think that's the issue of, so even, let's get back to like any problem. So just like how, like with a math problem or a science problem, you can attack it with theory and logic, and there's like an equation. You can do that with your mental health too, and how you're
Yes.
reacting to certain things. You say, okay, you know what, let me step back. And also, I find when you're identifying that even the people that you're around, let's just say you have close friendships or whatever it is, and you're realizing this person keeps bringing out something in me, it's also your right to kind of like step away from that relationship too. You don't have to like kind of accommodate someone else's how they're treating you after you've kind of identified, like, look, you keep doing this, I've told you a couple times, I've told you it triggers me, and you'll apologize, but then here we are again.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important in all aspects of life, but to be able to set appropriate boundaries,
right,
and to surround yourself with people that respect those boundaries.
Right.
That's a huge one, because that's really difficult to do.
Exactly, and people that when you're open enough and saying, this is my journey, this is what I want to be better, or I want to grow, and you have to make sure that that's everything. That's what you watch, that's who you're around, that's like, what you're going to subject yourself to. And I find that's sometimes probably the hardest part, severing relationships that no longer serve you, or they're not good for you.
Honestly, that was probably the hardest part for me, and half the reason I went to therapy was my ex-girlfriend and I, like, honestly, she is a good person, and like,
Just
anybody,
not for you.
yeah, anybody would be lucky to have her. She's a great person, but like, I was not happy, and the guilt that I felt because I wasn't happy made me feel like there was something wrong with me, because like, she was phenomenal in a lot of aspects of the relationship. Near the end, it wasn't so great, but a lot of that was just her responding to how I was behaving. So that really, really took a toll on me, where it was like, am I not supposed to be happy? How can I be happy? How do I set this boundary? We've gone so long. How do I break up? That was a really, really difficult skill to learn. And now that I've accomplished it and arguably removed myself from a situation that was unintentionally holding me down, I'm able to recognize that a lot faster, and like, I'm a lot more lethal. I'm not gonna lie, because I've been on both sides of it. I've been in the toxic relationship, I've been out of the toxic relationship, and I felt the transition from a negative state of mind to a significantly more positive state of mind. So now it's like, if there's somebody in my life that is negative or bringing out aspects on me, I'm very quick. I don't just cut them off, but I'm very quick to like, okay, I'm gonna establish some boundaries here. And like, the thing that frustrates me most is when people don't respect those. That's because they don't understand the vulnerability it takes to actually establish them to begin with.
Yeah, they don't realize, like, I do not, because, I've identified obviously from my past kill myself to do a favor, and then I suffer, and I don't like. So now that I'm like, okay, I recognize like, and for the lack of like telling people what's involved, but I think generally you should kind of have a background. Someone's getting their PhD. It is a lot of work. It's not like, oh, here, just, sign this paper, or, just write this paper and you're done. It's a long process. So if I've said it 6 or 7 times, like, hey, I'm just, I don't want to have to keep saying I'm busy. I don't like that. I don't like when people say that to me. So I don't like saying I'm busy, because I think it's sort of like we're all busy.
Oh, yeah.
Technically, we all can be busy at doing something. So, when I've said it a few times and you're just not respecting that, look, when I come up for air, or when there's calmer waters, or when I feel like I can actually hang out for like quality time with you, I'll let you know. But right now, I can't. Or I want to pick and choose because I know, what's involved. I just find like it's hard for me to even say that. So if I'm saying that and you're still not respecting me, I don't know.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean,
or you want to get angry. I don't know what to say.
I think there's a time and a place to recognize that there are definitely friendships that are still friendships out of obligation of what's happened in the past, and not necessarily the fact that they're still relevant and self-serving to both.
I call that quantity over quality.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's a lot of people that like to say, oh, I've been friends with you for 35 years or 40 years or 20 years, and it's like, yeah, but it's been sporadic. And
yeah, what's the level of friendship?
And it's just sort of like, yeah, you've known me for that long, but you haven't been intricately involved with me.
I think there's, like, people talk about finding a soulmate for a partner.
Yeah, like that's false.
I mean,
a soulmate could teach you a lesson, and a bad lesson.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I think personally, so like I've had the conversation with my current partner, and like we both kind of agree, like we both agree with the concept of soulmates. I just think that everybody has multiple.
Me too.
There's
I
tons,
think there's
right?
multiple, and it could be friends. It could be
exactly.
It could be coworkers. It could be a lot of different.
We went like this is we had a couple drinks and we were just having a great conversation, and we kind of decided that I think personally, if there is soulmates, everybody has multiple companion soulmates, lovers, and it depends on what level you are, where you're at in your life, on who's going to be drawn into you. So like you might have a soulmate for somebody that's if you're in a negative space, might not be the best level for you, but as you upgrade, you're going to get to these more.
You're gonna level up.
Yeah, you're gonna level up mentally, physically, everything, and your life's gonna open up to you, and like so is the potential for soulmates that are gonna be significantly more uplifting.
Well, isn't that like Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Have you heard of that?
I have no idea. No.
Okay,
That's so above my pay grade. That sounds like it came from a really large book.
It's actually a psychology book, but he actually said that like we have those levels. So like it's sort of like an inverted pyramid,
okay.
Right? So triangle, inverted pyramid. Oh my god, I can tell where my mind is. It's always using a synonym. So and of course at the top it's self-actualization. So they're saying like you have a basic need of food and shelter, and as you keep elevating, you get to this top. So it's exactly sort of like it's verbatim of what you just said. Like you're just leveling up.
Yeah, and that's something that honestly kind of helped snap me out of a lot of stuff was this kind of, because we had this conversation before we were really dating, and it kind of snapped my head into a space where I was like, let's just see where this takes us. Like let's just actively really dive in. Like let's really dive in and like let's really put in the work. And let's see like where we can get, and like how this is gonna play out, and like, do I care about her? Absolutely. Is there a chance that we might not be together for forever? Absolutely, and we can both acknowledge that without feeling like we're letting the other person down. Like, we're realistic enough to know that, life changes, people change, either positively or negatively, um, and there's multiple other soulmates or partners out there that are going to be just as beneficial, caring, loving, all those things.
Because you just never know.
And it's just life. Life throws you curveballs. Prime example.
Yeah.
Over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do believe wholeheartedly that there's the exact same hierarchy with friendships and companions.
Well, it's funny that you said that because when I was doing some soul searching recently, when like you're wondering, like, I still have, like, even though I'm on a path, you still have these. Is this my path? Like, you still have those those moments of clarity of like, am I really? And then it goes back to, so then of course, as you know, I'm purging. I'm like doing a lot of purging. So today I found a box that literally just had my mom's a few personal items, and it was in one little box, and I was opening it, so like her glasses and stuff. So of course, it's very nostalgic, and then it just kind of brought me back. Like, this wasn't all for nothing. Like, this could not possibly be, with all that has transpired, for nothing. There has to be a bigger reason.
I look at your situation, and personally, like, I see it as there's been so many very, very big milestones and markers for you that, like, we're all training for the 100-meter over here, and you're running marathons. So it's very interesting that you've kind of gone through this path and picked up all the skills that you have along the way, and like, you've ended up where you are today. Like, I find it very interesting. Like, there's very few other life paths that could have happened to you where you would have ended up even remotely as skillful as you are now when it comes to navigating.
Oh, true.
Like, your emotional intelligence. I mean, just the fact that like you walked through a pandemic like a boss. I mean, there's a lot of things that you've picked up along the way that a lot of people haven't or can't, and that is largely based on circumstance. And that's because you've lived through it, you've experienced it, you've lived through it, you've accepted it, you've processed it, and you're able to move on, and like do it in a healthy way. And like, that's a lot of growth for one lifetime. It's a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So like, the idea that sometimes you're like, am I on the right path?
I know, sometimes I am.
I personally love it because like, I look at you and I'm like, is she even human? And then like, you're like, am I on the right path? I'm like, oh no, she is human.
Maybe.
Humans have that underlying little bit of self-doubt.
Because I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, what, should I have done this? But then of course you're like, well, if I did that, this wouldn't happen, or I wouldn't be, or like,
it's like the time traveler's paradox, where like, if you change something, then like, the reality as you know it is no longer.
Well, there's a definite ripple effect. So I have to be I'm very mindful of, listen, I need to make a change, and the change obviously isn't going to benefit me, but the change will benefit a lot of people, and I think that's really my path. I have to fight for those people that can't fight for themselves.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see where that all takes you for
I'll
sure.
be on Oprah.
Yeah, just being like, oh hey.
Yeah.
This is my journey.
This is my journey, and it's gonna take more than one show. So this will be like sequels.
Yeah. Today.
I better have my own network.
We have a mini series. 12 episodes, 2 hours each. Yeah, and I find it interesting because like, there's a lot of people out there that are very, very similar. I mean, I was introduced a couple months ago to a young woman who grew up in horrendous circumstances, like really, really bad stuff. Parents were severe drug addicts. Her 3 siblings are in and out of prison, severe drug addicts. Just followed what was taught to them, more or less. There's a lot of neglect, a ton of abuse, and I look at her and see what she's doing with her life, and I'm like, you're the most inspirational person I've ever met in my life, because you're actively doing everything you can to grow and get better, and to mentally deal with some of the stuff that you know, you were forced to live through, and she's out here just doing her thing and just trying to like be better in every way, and I'm just like, what do I have to complain about? I mean,
well, that's I was talking to another client the other day, and sometimes, no, everyone has their own personal story. So, like, yeah, like when people say, "Oh, there's other people worse than me," you don't have to compare yourself to the worst or the at least factor.
Yeah.
You know, like, well, at least, or it could be worse. I tried to even train my brain not to say that. Like, when I told you, like, the whole kettle went the other way, and I was like, "Oh, that's what we're doing now," and I just changed because I got completely soaked. And then I just mopped the floor because I'm like, okay, I guess I have to mop the floor now because it's all wet. It's 2 for 1.
I think, it's very, like, I had this conversation again with my partner, but, like, you cannot, it's unfair to anybody to try to compare traumas.
Exactly. Contrast.
You can't do it.
Oh, yeah? Well, you think that's bad?
You can, like, in my opinion, you can look at somebody that's been through hardship and has come out as, like, a phoenix rising from the ashes and is like, no, I'm not going to let this hold me down. I'm not going to let this define me. You can look at somebody like that for inspiration, and I think that's really, for me anyway, that's a really positive thing, because I really like to be able to look at people like that and be like, okay, like, the world hasn't kind of gone for crap. You know what I mean? Like, it's great to see people out there that are, like, actively working on themselves and really trying to be better instead of just deciding that the status quo is okay for them.
Well, I even said that. Like, I don't want to be... I'm very honest and open about, like, yeah, I was one of those people in a fetal position, like, wanting not to deal with the world.
Oh.
So, like, this hasn't just been like, oh yeah, I've just always been like this. It's just identifying and just rolling through. Like, you know, it hasn't been easy, and of course, if I knew what I know now, I would be like, hey, just, you know, it's gonna get better, even though I know that's strange because, like, my mom is no longer here, but it's better because she's not trapped in that body.
Yes.
That was deteriorating around her. And now I can really put my work, that life's work that I keep saying, to use. It's like, I really have to really think about it. It is my life's work. So, you know.
Yeah.
I have to do something with it.
Literal definition.
Yeah. Like, so I really have to do something about it.
Yeah. I think, and that's really good. Like, I think where I am right now is, and we touched base on this briefly at the start, but, like, I'm at this weird transition. Like, I've come out of the limbo. You know, my brain is starting to kind of kick on.
Like, ding, ding, ding,
yeah,
ding, ding.
exactly. Somebody's actually home now. It's good. But, like, I was sleepwalking or like just mentally gone for so long that, like, I get to rediscover what I'm passionate about, and it's like, for a very long time I found it incredibly daunting because I'm like, oh my god, like, I need to find something I'm passionate about, or like changing careers. I want to find something that I enjoy.
Well,
and
they say that if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to find.
Exactly. Like, I just want to find something that, like, I enjoy doing, and I can find a sense of purpose and passion within that line of work. And
you know what you have to do? You have to take money out of the equation. So
that's a big one. That's a big one.
It's hard to do for a lot of people because they're like, oh yeah, how can you do it when you have all these things? But you literally have to take. That's why I always ask you, if you could do anything. It's a simple question, and you know how many clients struggle with this?
I seriously struggle with it, and I still do.
You're not the only one.
Yeah.
And I still don't have an answer from you and people that I ask all the time. If you, and so we'll end with that, and we can pick it up next time. But if you can do anything, what would you do?
Yeah. And like I said, like, I found it very daunting. That's a very daunting question. And just recently I'm starting to look at it as exciting.
Right.
Because I get to discover that.
And you get to, and we were touching on this off the podcast, but it's when you are focused on, I guess, a career or money from that career or whatever job or trade or whatever it is that is bringing you your livelihood, you are missing out on, hey, but if I had this, like if I just had like a job that pays my living expenses, like very mundane job, but it doesn't consume me. It doesn't take a lot of brain power, and not to be rude, but it really doesn't. I'm not gonna leave it and go, oh my, talk about it for the rest of the day. I'm not stressed out about it. I'm actually laughing my head because it's so easy. And then it gives me room to do all my passions. So I'm having my needs met financially, so I'm not stressed, and I get to work on my other things that I'm planting or growing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'd be great if you get to a point where, like, quote unquote side hustles become the reality.
And then you're like, oh my god, this side hustle is exploding. I now have to make a decision because it's so big. I now, it's bigger than me. And then you're like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
You just grew your dream because it wasn't work to you. Your side hustle is your passion, right? So it wasn't work to you. And I'm not saying the dissertation is my passion, so I'm putting that clear. It is work to me. It's a lot of work. But I know there's a means to an end. Sometimes there's like that growth phase where it's a means to an end. Like when you're planting a seed and it's trying to sprout and you can see it's struggling, but you know it's gonna sprout.
Yeah, it's gonna get there.
You give it time.
A little bit of
You
time.
don't dig it back up to see, hey, are you still down there? You don't dig up the seed.
You doing all right, bro?
Yeah.
You're right.
You just nurture the seed, and you know it's going to be either a plant or a tree or whatever that you planted initially, or it's going to be bigger than what you planted because you just trusted the process.
Yeah.
That's the struggle of not digging up those seeds. Are you still growing?
Yeah.
Are you still growing?
Yeah, literally.
Or just leaving the seed and not watering it and just expecting it to grow and you're not doing anything to it.
So you need to be able to put in work.
Right.
And you need to trust yourself because self-doubt will cripple anything. Yeah.
Right. So, and we were talking about that. What resists persists. So it's letting go and trusting the process, just as you know. Hey, if I plant this seed, I water it, I give it sunlight, I put it in the proper soil, it's going to grow. It's guaranteed that it's going to grow. And not neglecting it, not watering it, and then getting angry that it didn't grow. Or digging it up and hindering its process because you want to control the outcome.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're going to leave it at that because that was a lot. And we could talk about that control thing because that's a good topic.
Yeah.
Trying to control the outcome.
Yeah, that sounds like the next podcast, actually.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Learning to let go.
Go with the flow, man. Go with the flow.
Which is very difficult for people. So we'll leave it there because I was talking to Father Tobin about that. Well, he was actually speaking to me about last Sunday, and he had some really good words of wisdom. It's not Catholic words of wisdom, just general words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom are words of wisdom. Doesn't matter where they came from.
He's been around a long time, so
if you find meaning in words, that's all that
we
matters.
should get him on a podcast one time, but
Yeah.
he'd have to, he has a thick Irish accent, so I could probably have to translate some of the words.
That's all good.
But yeah, okay. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.